Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping straight into some really interesting insights from today's newspaper. We're going to unpack four different sections for you. A real snapshot of current challenges. We'll cover human dignity and policy, the kind of silent impact of data delays, a big public health issue, and finally, national self-reliance in defense tech. Our mission, as always, is to pull out the key takeaways for you, our listener, and maybe connect some dots. Okay, so let's start with this editorial. It really focuses on the human side of policy decisions. We're looking at repatriation, local integration for Sri Lankan refugees. Many have been in Tamil Nadu for, over 30 years now. And the article points to two recent things, not directly related, but they really make you think when you see them together. First, there was this comment from the Supreme Court of India. An oral observation, actually, saying India is not a dharamshala, like a free shelter, which honestly was a bit of a shock given past judicial empathy. This came up when a refugee wanted to settle here after serving a sentence. He'd promised to leave before, apparently. And then almost right after, you hear about this elderly refugee septuagenarian. He returns to Sri Lanka on his own accord, return facilitated by the UNHCR in Chennai, mind you, and he gets detained on arrival for leaving without valid document. He only got released after a public outcry, and a Sri Lankan minister promised policy changes. Just, wow, what a contrast.
Yeah, these individual cases, they're tough to hear, but they really do highlight the bigger picture, systemic issues, definitely. And it shows this stark contrast in how India seems to approach different refugee groups. You've got nearly 90,000 Sri Lankan refugees in Tamil Nadu, but then there are also, over 63,000 Tibetan refugees? They've been here even longer. But their situations, the government policies, they're really quite different, right? So for the Tibetans, the Union government actually created the Tibetan Rehabilitation Policy, the TRP, back in 2014. That policy focuses on productive engagement, welfare schemes, encouraging them in fields like engineering, medicine. But there's nothing like that, no comprehensive document for the Sri Lankan refugees. And interestingly, official reports explicitly state the goal for Sri Lankan refugees is repatriation, that word. It's just not used when discussing Tibetans. That long-term view, it changes everything.
That is a huge difference, especially when you think about what Tamil Nadu's government has been doing. They've had welfare programs for years, and the article mentions nearly 500 young refugees with engineering degrees, but then it says hardly 5% actually get jobs in engineering. Private companies, especially IT firms, seem really reluctant. Why? The talent's there, right? The education is there.
It is baffling, isn't it? The article suggests a big part of it is just the label, the tag of being a refugee. It seems to carry this social stigma, and unfortunately a corporate one too, no matter the individual's qualifications. Companies maybe see it as legally complicated, or perhaps they worry about long-term stability for the employee, even if the reality, especially in Tamil Nadu, might be different. The core issue seems to be the lack of a clear union government policy on their status for, local integration. Until that happens, this potential just isn't being used.
So, okay, beyond the policy gaps, what's the real takeaway here?
Dignity. The article really hammers this home. It argues that being called a refugee isn't something anyone with self-respect wants to hold on to forever. It calls for durable solutions, a proper package deal, repatriation for those who want it, integration for those who don't. And crucially, this needs to be worked out with everyone involved, including Sri Lanka. It's been over 40 years since the first influx.
Yep.
How long can these camps go on?
Exactly. And with World Refugee Day just past June 20th, the theme was solidarity with refugees. The article basically asks, how meaningful is solidarity if people aren't allowed to live with honor? It's not just about shelter. It's about self-sufficiency, being part of society. This lack of a clear, unified policy just keeps people dependent, stifles their potential.
Right. Okay, let's shift gears. Let's talk about something huge. India's delayed census. Last one was 2011. It should have been 2021, but obviously COVID happened. But now it's pushed again, all the way to 2027. That's
Okay.
Well, the article calls it inexplicable. We're going to be using data that's 16 years old for planning. In a country changing this fast. Yeah, the article really digs into this. Will the long delay mess up the actual implementation? Okay, 2021 delay. Understandable. Pandemic. But pushing it to 2027, experts point out things were getting back to normal by mid-2022. It definitely raises some eyebrows, and the implications are pretty serious.
Oh, absolutely profound consequences. Because India keeps making policy, allocating money, based on assumptions that are wildly out of date. Just think about it. The population growth, migration within the country, how fast cities are growing, fertility rates, all changing dramatically. But we're using 2011 data. It's like trying to navigate Mumbai today with a map from, 2011. And the knock-on effects are everywhere. School planning, Way off. Vaccine drives. You might miss your targets because you don't know the real numbers. Social welfare, like the PDS food distribution or MGNRGS employment scheme. They can't adjust properly. And think about disaster planning or where to build roads, hospitals, basic infrastructure. It's all hampered. It really undermines effective governing.
And this next census, when it does finally happen, it's going to be India's first digital one, which sounds efficient, right? Faster processing, maybe fewer errors. But there are big concerns about exclusion. What about people in remote rural areas? Or informal settlements, marginalized groups? And especially women, the article mentions only about a third of rural women even use the internet. A digital-first census could easily miss these people, right? How do you make sure it's accurate and inclusive?
That is the critical question. The article is really clear on this.
Yeah.
You absolutely must keep the door-to-door in-person enumeration, especially in hard-to-reach places. Technology should help, not replace, the human connection and the enumerators. They need serious training, not just on the tech, but on how to talk to diverse groups, handle different languages, navigate sensitive questions, like distinguishing surnames from caste names, which is key since this is the first time caste enumeration is happening post-independence. That human element is crucial to avoid bias.
So, stepping back, this huge delay, the shift to digital, what does it all mean for India?
Well, the census isn't just counting people, is it? It's the foundation for all planning, policy, resource allocation. It's how we understand big shifts like rapid urbanization, migration, the fact that India's population is aging. The number of older people is said to nearly double soon. Without current, accurate data, how can you possibly be proactive? How can you invest effectively, especially in helping marginalized communities? It's about building the future on solid ground, not guesswork based on old numbers.
Okay, next up, a really critical public health issue, but one that sometimes flies under the radar. India's alcohol crisis. The article starts with a pretty blunt statement. The safe limit for alcohol consumption is 0 ml. 0. Yet the numbers are stark. 23% of Indian men, 1% of women drink. And India has one of the highest rates of heavy episodic drinking. Millions need help. And the impact is huge, not just for individuals. We're talking increased risk of injuries, mental illness, cancers, NCDs, plus aggression, crime, suicides. It's all linked. In 2021, alcohol use led to about 2.6 million disability-adjusted life years deaths in India. That's years lost to death or disability, the cost to society. An estimated 6.24 trillion. That's huge. And get this, per capita consumption shot up by around 240% in the last 2 decades. And that's probably an underestimate, since almost half the alcohol used is unrecorded.
It's such a complex problem. And what's interesting is how the article breaks down why. You've got the biopsychosocial stuff, genes, how alcohol affects the brain's reward system, stress relief, social pressures, media portrayals. But then you have these really powerful commercial determinants, the industry actively pushing it. Broadening product ranges, targeting new users, younger people, surrogate ads, sponsorships, happy hours, putting shops everywhere, and pricing, making sure there are options for every income level, from cheap local stuff to fancy brands. It's very deliberate market expansion.
Right, that commercial push definitely plays a role, but here's where India gets really complex, doesn't it? Alcohol is a state subject. Each state basically makes its own rules. Taxes, sales, licenses, everything. So you get this wild variation. Prohibition in places like Bihar and Gujarat. Then other states actively promoting sales. Kerala marketing toddy, Andhra Pradesh offering cheap liquor. Some states are even looking at online delivery, which seems totally counterproductive to limiting access. And even the legal drinking age changes from state to state, 18 here, 25 there. It's a total patchwork.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And it leads to the big question. Why doesn't India have a unified national policy on alcohol, despite the massive public health cost? Various national health policies have called for one, Mental Health Policy 2014, National Health Policy 2017, the Suicide Prevention Strategy 2022. But right now, efforts are scattered. Different ministries handle different bits. The National Action Plan for Drug Demand Reduction, for example, it's split up. You don't get that cohesive national strategy that seems so necessary.
So given all that complexity, what's the way forward? What does the article suggest?
It proposes a systems approach, evidence-based, focused on equity. And it outlines these 7 A's, a framework really. Affordability, making it less cheap without pushing people to dangerous illicit stuff. Allocation, using alcohol taxes specifically for public health, transparently. Accessibility, controlling where and when it's sold, promoting alcohol-free spaces, advertisement cracking down on surrogate ads, online amplification, attractiveness, things like plain packaging, warnings, awareness, massive public education campaigns, and even artificial intelligence using AI to spot and block harmful online content about alcohol.
7 A's, okay.
Yeah. Ultimately, the big call is for a proper national alcohol control policy and program, one that clearly puts people over profit, prevention over just collecting revenue, long-term health over short-term gains. The article acknowledges it's tough. Alcohol is tied up with state money, social habits, politics. But it argues a unified approach is urgent.
Okay, finally, let's switch to defense and tech, a really strategic area, India's persistent propulsion gap. Basically, the heavy reliance on imported engines for military gear. The article starts with a history lesson, actually. The HF-24 Marut fighter jet from the 1950s. India designed it, but it never really performed as hoped. Why? Underpowered British engines, it was retired by 1990, and the point made is that high-end fighters live or die by propulsion technology. Engines are the heart. Sounds familiar, right?
Painfully familiar. That history lesson echoes right through to today. Look at the DRDO's effort with the carry engine for the LCA Tejas. They spent, over 2,000 crore? Over 35 years trying to develop it, but it just couldn't meet the specs. Thrust-to-weight ratio, reliability issues remained. So the Tejas had to use a U.S. engine, the General Electric F404, which the article calls barely adequate. It limited the plane's capabilities for a long time. It's a real bottleneck.
And this dependency came back to bite recently, didn't it? GE delayed delivering 99 of those F404 engines for the upgraded LCA Mk1A by 13 months. They blamed supply chain issues, but it delayed the aircraft commissioning. And it led to the Air Chief Marshal publicly criticizing HAL Hindustan Aeronautics Limited for constant delays. He pointed out the drop in the Air Force's combat strength and basically said, we need capability now, not just plans. That's pretty blunt.
It really underscores the vulnerability, and it's not just current delays. Negotiations with GE to build a more powerful engine, the F414, here in India. They've hit a wall. This engine is needed for the next-gen planes, the LCA Mk2, the MCA fighter. But GE apparently wants another $500 million. And more importantly, they won't share the core tech. Things like single crystal turbine blades, the really critical stuff for engine performance and durability. Insiders say leading powers just don't share that kind of know-how.
And it's not just planes, is it? The article says this dependency is everywhere.
Across the board. The Army's Arjun tank. German engines. The new Zoroar light tank. U.S. engines. The Navy. Completely reliant on foreign engines. Russia, Ukraine, France, Germany, U.S. For all its ships built in India. Frigates, destroyers, everything. It's a fundamental issue, which is why developing engine tech indigenously is so vital. It's about genuine aerospace autonomy, strategic self-reliance. It's about keeping the military ready. It's about credible deterrence and protecting the defense sector from global politics and supply shocks. Look at the U.S., France, China. Their power projection is heavily based on having their own engine tech. Without it, India's bigger defense ambitions, including exports, are always going to be held back. It's almost an existential challenge for its strategic goals.
So when you pull it all together, what's the real story behind this propulsion gap?
The article argues it's not just a technical problem, it's fundamentally political, rooted in how defense funding is fragmented, maybe too focused on short-term projects rather than a long-term strategic vision for something as complex as engine development. It suggests that without major structural reforms, real political commitment, and building an ecosystem that brings together private industry, academia, and defense R&D, well, slogans like Atmanirbhar Bharat, self-reliant India, just won't be enough for this challenge. India's broader aviation and defense goals will stay compromised.
Thank you for listening. If today's episode gave you something useful, consider following us on Spotify so you're the first to hear the next one. You can give suggestions by contacting on Twitter handle given in the episode description. We are always eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.